Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the BestFit Body Podcast. I'm Elle, and I am one of your hosts, and I have with me my wonderful mother and business partner and BFF, Jules. She's here. How you doing, Jules?
I am doing great, Elle. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just shoveled some food into my mouth after the gym. I had an awesome back workout and I did my steady state cardio and I literally ate so fast. I was like, I have 13 minutes before we start recording. So I'm doing great. I'm energized.
You're energized. I feel the same. I just got off of about 3.5 hours talking to some of our clients and some prospective competitors about getting ready to embark on some big goals. So I am, as usual, pretty fired up to talk about today's topic.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because it's right now it is June. It's almost mid-June 2021. And we have so many excited people. It's almost like and we were joking right before this. We were like, we're not even going to talk about anything about how the pandemic and quarantine and how it changed everything. But it's kind of hard to ignore how much it changed people's lives and perspectives and kind of how it set up people to make new goals and to actually want to do something to change their habits. And so today's topic is going to be all about the competitor mindset and what it takes to get into the mindset, what it takes to keep the mindset rolling, and then also what it means to start to shift out of the competitor mindset and back into more of a normal life. And, as coaches and as competitive athletes ourselves, there is a time where off season isn't really off season, it's improvement season. And there is a difference between an off season and an improvement season when you are an athlete. But there's something about the mindset that has to continue throughout all of the phases in order to be successful in each one. So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the competitor mindset, and I'm excited because my mindset is a little different than it has been over the past couple of years that we've even been doing this podcast, because most of the episodes I have been in an off season, not necessarily even an improvement season. And in many ways, there were improvements that were made, but they weren't strictly macro related or physique related or training related. They were more life related. And it's really important for you, the listeners, to understand that when you are in that prep mindset and you are in that competition mindset, that's okay to be 110% there. But just because you're in an off season and not necessarily an improvement season, it doesn't mean that your mindset isn't as important. And it also doesn't mean that your mindset has to be so crazy 110%. There has to be a balance aspect in that off or improvement season. Jules, why don't you take it away with some of the first thoughts that you have about the competitor mindset?
Well, I have to agree with you 100%. And for our listeners out there, if you're listening and maybe you're not even a competitor, or maybe that really isn't in your goal package or bucket list, this topic is really still appropriate for pretty much anybody when they realize that there are things that they need to do, whether it is fitness related, health related, or even maybe, life, like professional job or school, or just other aspects of improving yourself or improving the quality of your life, that I'm hoping that you will also see the value of our discussion, because mindset, it's the same idea of when people will say, well, I could never do that because I don't have the willpower. And I use that term and that relationship with a different word of determination. Willpower and determination, mindset and motivation. Those are how I look at the concept that we're going to talk about here. And, we're going to talk a little bit today in a little bit more of a conversation mode rather than throwing facts and things and some experiential things, because I find this is very personal topic for people. And what one person's mindset is for something may really propel them forward. Whereas if you take that mindset and somebody else has that, it would be like hitting against a wall, because your mindset is very personal and it comes from that internal drive. Like, what do I want? What do I want to get out of this? What do I want to put into this to get the results? And so the mindset is really like, why am I doing this? What's my focus? What am I willing to do? And those things can change. But if you look at it as a positive driving mindset or one that is going to hold you in place or throw you back. And I think as you go along through, if we're going to talk about this in terms of a competitor, which I'm going to pivot now and talk a little bit as from the competitor's focus, I think that anybody listening can relate to this. So if we think about, and this is a common question that we as coaches are asked by people who may be curious, or they think they're interested in doing a competition or some big fitness goal, they're trying to find their way around getting in the right mindset. And often people think that to be a competitor, and Al, you just referenced it, where people think that they have to be in it 110%. Well, sometimes your mindset can't be that way 100% of the time. You can't be 110% 100% of the time. But when you first start to think about what do you want from a fitness adventure, a fitness journey, embarking on a big goal, it really starts with that sprinkling of desire. And then you say, well, I desire to be better. I desire to be fit, or I desire to be that person up on stage, or I desire to get my pro card. Then how do I take that and cultivate that mindset? So it starts with those little seeds. And Elle, I think you experienced this even recently when, and you might want to share even some of this, coming off of, like many of us, through a really rough year or maybe longer with COVID, where suddenly you're thinking, wow, I'm at a place where I'm a little uncomfortable. And maybe I need to pivot and turn that around. So what can I do? Well, that's the first step of the mindset. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and if I could, I could just explain a little bit about that mindset. And so for me, COVID was very hard for me. Just, I was very isolated, and like many, I know a lot of people either lived with people or they had family. I was mostly by myself all of this quarantine. So, I wasn't going out much. I wasn't seeing a lot of people. And so I had a lot of time to sit by myself and think about my life goals and who I am and who I want to be. And it almost became a very reflective time where at first I was like, man, I'm doing nothing. Like I've got nothing going on. And then I was like, you know what? I kind of have to sit in the nothingness, and I kind of have to appreciate doing nothing to prepare me to begin to do something. And it was kind of crazy because so my last show was in it was in November of 2018. And so now we're in June of 2021, and I'm about 8 weeks out, 8 weeks and 2 days out from my first show of the season. And I wasn't in a physically uncomfortable place. I was not upset with how my body was. I was not eager to change that. I was eager to accomplish something. And I think that that's one of the first and most important parts of deciding that you want to do a competition prep, because of course it's very fun to change the way that your physique looks, but oftentimes people will enter a competition prep as an excuse to work hard, as an excuse to get their body to a place where they think that they want it. And the problem with using that as the driving factor is that once you get your physique to that point, if that's the only thing that's driving you, it's going to be very hard to sustain that physique, because the actual work and the process isn't exactly what has pushed you to get there. It's the desire to just look a certain way. And so when we talk about the competitor mindset, this is something that I have really been focused on over the last, I've been in prep for now about, I would say 10 weeks, maybe 8, 9, 10 weeks. And I ruminated on the idea for a little while as the gyms were opening back up, and I started my prep working out at home, and I knew I was going to be getting back to the gym. But I was eager for the growth and the process of reaching a goal. And obviously the cool changes in the physique come with it. But I was so motivated to have a reason to wake up every day. And, you know, that can sound a little dark because there's a lot of reasons to wake up every day. But I kind of went through a big transition in my life, realizing like I'll sidetrack a little bit, but I spent about 2 years kind of living my life, not training for a specific goal, kind of, you know, eating, drinking, you know, I wouldn't say partying because I'm not a huge partier, but I had a very hoppin' social life. And once quarantine hit, and even throughout the times where I was enjoying this social life, I realized I actually enjoy setting goals and accomplishing them a lot better than being hungover on a Saturday or a Sunday morning. And I like to wake up every day and have something to look forward to and to work towards. And so that's kind of a little bit of an insight into my mindset and where I'm at, and why I think it's so important to love the process and to really want the process and not just the end result. And mindset wise, you've got to have that intrinsic motivation. You can't have any external motivation like, oh, you know, it's because I want to look good on the beach, or I want to like look hot at this event. Like, yeah, that's great, but there's got to be a little bit more substance to it.
Absolutely. I think to push yourself through it's the grind, you know, when you are doing a show, when you're preparing for a show, you really have to embrace the concept that you have to treat a little bit like a job. You know, it's a job you love to do, but you have to get to the gym. You have to prep your food. You have to get enough sleep. You know, you've got this checklist every day of these things you have to do to get this done. But the mindset is, I want to do it. And you take that in stride, and the mindset is the focus and it drives the motivation, and the motivation drives the mindset. And so people will watch somebody competing and saying, I don't see how you can do it. But for those of you who have done something like this, done a competition, you know that there's this kind of rush every day when you've hit all those checks, you know, all those, you know, those little ticks in your box that you've got to do because you know you've given it your all. And that's the mindset when you go in. Remember that 110%, you can't do it all the time, but your mindset is that you're going to do your best to do it. And then it just feeds you through it. And that, I think, is so important to get you through the times where results may be slow, or you may be also dealing with obstacles along the way. You have to take that mindset of, no matter what, I'm going to get it done. And that's very different from somebody who says, oh, I have a goal of, you know, I'm going to get in shape for the summer, or, you know, I'm going to look hot in my bikini on the beach, or, you know, I'm going to get into my jeans that I couldn't wear since last winter. So, you know, but it can be applicable to anybody. You don't have to be a competitor, but it is something that is so consistent with competitors who then make it through, who end up having this success. And I'm not talking about success, they place first, get their pro card. I'm talking about success for them to get to that event. And that is really why so many people really thrive on this. And that's why once you've gone through it, usually you're kind of addicted to the empowerment of having that mindset. And it really can, when people say, oh, I'm kind of struggling, we often, and Elle experiences this personally, as well as with her clients, that we sometimes have to do this recircle. Let's go back to where your mindset is. Why? What are we doing? What is the focus? Why are we doing this? What is in your mind? Would you do this work anyway? And the mindset is usually, yes, I would. So what's getting in your way? Sometimes it's just that, that sort of noise that goes on going, oh, we've got all this other stuff to do. You can switch it. Well, yes, but you've got the mindset for success. So you've got to follow through. But don't you agree, Elle, that it's like, it's a little addictive, but in a positive way. It gets you going. It wakes you up in the morning, excited to embark upon the day. All those people working out at the gym at 5:30 in the morning, they've got the mindset.
Yeah. Well, and I'll even share this. I'm working with a gal on her posing, and it's kind of fun for me when I get to work with posing gals that aren't my own clients, just because I do a lot of, the tell me how you're feeling, like tell me what's going on. And so this gal that I just posed with yesterday, I had said, I saw your transformation and you look great. And she's about 6 weeks out. So she's been in prep for about 2 times that. So for about 12 weeks, 12 weeks in. And I said, you're 12 weeks in and about 6 weeks out. And I was like, so how do you feel about your progress? And she said to me, I see the pictures and the pictures are great and the progress is great. And she said, but what I see the most is where my mental state was when I took those photos. And she said, I felt a little silly. She felt like, this like, am I a wannabe, like, fitness person? And she said, and now she's like, she was even kind of joking because she's like, I feel a little like corny saying this, but the mental growth is what has been so satisfying. And I just, and I even have chills when I'm repeating that to you guys, because when she told me that it just gave me this feeling and this reminder of that's exactly what this sport is supposed to do. It's exactly that. You're supposed to be at a place and work, execute, and then by the end of all of the execution is where you receive all of that. I don't even know. I guess it's this feeling of accomplishment, and it's a confidence thing, and it's a growth aspect. And, she said, I started and I was working out in the women's room, in the women's only section of the gym. And now, I know what I'm doing. And so it's the empowerment that comes from achieving a goal, which is what should drive you to want to do something like this. And again, this sport and this endeavor is not for everybody. And so that's why the mindset aspect of it is so important. And you have to be mentally in a space where you are going to be giving up things in order to accomplish this goal. Because listen, anybody could sign up for a competition and choose not to work hard. And when they get to show day, and it's not to say that people that don't necessarily like place first didn't work hard. But that's a personal thing. Like maybe it will reflect in the judges, standings wherever you land, but you will know if you gave your all during that prep. And if you haven't, that's where you decide, okay, I see where I went wrong. These are the things that I have to change, or you never do it again. And so I think that that's kind of an important thing to look at when it comes to, should I do this again? Am I in the right mental space to do it again? But I also think that we should talk about the competitor mindset after a show if you do not do as well as you had hoped for or expected to, because there are times where this sport, you may not get the placing that you want, and your coach, your friends, even like some other competitors will be like, that was a little weird. Like, we're surprised that, the results ended up one way or another. But it's so important to realize that on that day, whatever those results are, that can't change your mindset. It can't change your motivation. Well, it can change your motivation a little bit, but you also have to be able to let that bounce off of you. In order to really be successful, you need to collect data. You need to see where you went wrong. You need to maybe ask for more help from a professional, whether it be posing, maybe a different coach, maybe you didn't have a coach at all, even asking for feedback from the head judge. So there's a lot of things that you can do after a show to almost protect your mindset, leading you into, because it's so unfortunate, but I've seen it happen, and it's even happened to my girls. I've had girls who were on cloud 9. They were doing so great. They even earned a pro card. And then they have one show where the results don't go the way that they want, and they fall apart. And it's really hard to save somebody once they get to that point of falling apart after the results of the show come out. So Jules, what do you have to say about that?
Oh yeah, no, I have a lot to say about that. I'm going to try to be succinct here. I think you brought up a great point, because you think about we see it so often. The competitors, they're in a solid mindset. They're reaping all the positives of what their experience is. They go through these huge transformations. They have pushed themselves during times that they otherwise wouldn't have. They've met challenges, and yet they still, get back up and on their feet and on their way. And then the judging comes down, and they're thrown completely off, and they're putting all of their value, their personal value, on the shoulders, the responsibility of the judges to validate themselves. And that is not what the judging is. And that is not what a true competitor should be prepared for. A true competitor should be prepared for not winning. You should be prepared for that. You should be in the mindset that you're going to fight to win, but you have to be prepared that you won't, because there is nothing that's going to sour a wonderful experience than you making the decision to internalize those scores, which are just a bunch of numbers from people that see you, which, if you're a competitor and you've competed before, it's a fleeting moment. You have no control over so much that happens on that day, except for you getting out there on the stage and showcasing your physique. Now, you could learn a lot. As Elle said, you could find out that, just this spring, I had a gal who just from looking at her and all the metrics of it all, she should have just blown everybody away. She got up on stage and she was a nervous wreck. And she kind of fell apart with her posing. Okay. Now, she walked off and said, I know that. I can see that. But she didn't give up. She went back to the drawing board 2 weeks later, got up on stage, slammed it. Next time was about a month later, just kept improving, and ended up having the most phenomenal year, because she did not let anything dig into her mindset. And in this sport, as in so many other sports, so if you play soccer, now, of course, if you play on a team, you can kind of say, oh, it was a goalie's fault, or it was a so-and-so's. No, okay? You always have to accept that. If something doesn't go right, or you didn't do what you were supposed to do, who owns that responsibility? You do, okay? But even if you were the goalie on that soccer team and you messed up, you wouldn't quit playing, would you? No. You'd go back and study what you did and say, I'm going to be better prepared when this happens. It's the same thing. And this is what I think teaches the competitor to live with the ups and the downs, because you need to be prepared for those things that might sucker punch you. And the validation, it shouldn't be why you do it or why you don't do it. It should be a celebration of it. And yeah, everybody wants first place. Everybody wants that pro card. But if you don't get it, that means you weren't ready for it, you know? And so you have to be ready for that in your mindset. So that's what I'm talking about. You have to be prepared that you're not ready quite yet, but that doesn't mean that it stops you. That doesn't mean it stops your motivation for continuing to be better. So, you know, we call it, you know, having a little bit of a thick skin. We call it being a good sport. There's all sorts of ways that we can look at this, but it is to be a really well-rounded athlete, a well-rounded competitor who can thrive in this sport. If you watch, you know, the pros and all the federations and that come back year after year, or maybe they take 2 years and they come back because they have learned how to value those things in their mindset. So that is a very important thing. And so, you know, it takes us then what happens after the show, whether you get your first place, your pro card, or you don't. Then you have to be able to cultivate the continuation of the mindset that brings you the joys and the successes of what you want. Now, if you've made the decision, if somebody makes a decision that the show is over, they're ready to, you know, hang up their heels or their suit and say, I'm ready to, you know, move on to something else, move into a, you know, more of a fitness lifestyle. Or I've had people go on and they do other, you know, activities and they still get, you know, to cultivate all those things. And it's because of the mindset. It's their mindset that I am still going to continue on to do the things that bring me value, that bring me joy, make me a better person. Do you want to add anything to that, Elle?
No, I think that you summed it up really well. I want to ask you your opinion on this, because this is something that worries me as a competitor and a coach when I watch new people or sometimes even experienced people come into the sport and they maybe have a great prep and then they have one of those things that kind of throws them off, or even entering into so basically what I'm getting is I kind of want to talk about the mindset for when like a reverse diet doesn't go so great, or like the post-show like goals don't always go according to plan, because I think that this happens a lot, and I think that people can be very, very hard on themselves post-show when either fat gain happens too quickly, or life happens, or even they lose some motivation. So I just kind of want to know what your advice is to somebody who may have been a successful competitor and maybe felt like they were going to have a great improvement season or off season, or maybe even transition out of competing entirely. But any advice on the mindset for somebody who, let's use this as an example, is having a harder time sticking to their reverse diet and gaining fat and weight a little bit too quickly? Because like I said, I think that this happens a lot, and I know that it is talked about, but every time I see someone talk about it and they talk positively about how to kind of embrace it and how to work with it and then how to kind of roll with it and go with it, I always get like a little sigh of relief, because I know how difficult that can be to either gain a little bit too quickly or just to not be quote unquote perfect, because you're so used to being 110%. Like when I'm in prep, I don't eat over my macros. I don't miss my cardio. I don't miss a training session because my mindset is all in. And so once we shift out of that competitor mindset, the competitor mindset is still there. That little part inside of you that says, ooh, you're off your plan. Ooh, you're going to have to check in with your coach. Ooh, you weren't perfect this week like you had been for the past sometimes 6 months, sometimes 8 months, sometimes a whole year people are in prep. So what do you say to the competitor who is struggling mentally with this kind of shift from prep to off-season improvement season, reverse diet season?
Yeah, no, that's a very loaded thing. First and foremost, I think it is helpful to reassure each and every person out there who's ever come in with a mindset that they're going to do something and yet somehow hasn't been able to follow through. So the first thing is, you're a human being, and maybe the mindset that you were expecting to have, because especially competitors who have been following, that grind and they get that positive endorphin reinforcement, all those things going on, maybe we have to reassign the goal. Okay. So one of the most important things is, remember, you're human. Remember, you always can start again. Okay. And sometimes a fresh start with a new goal will realign the mindset for what is realistic. And that, I think, is the biggest factor, what is realistic for a person coming off of a show. And that is so personal. For some people, it's realistic for them to go into another show. It's realistic to go into an improvement season. It is realistic, but sometimes they may have it in their mind that that's what they want to do, but it's not realistic because all these other things are now starting to knock at their internal brain, going, no, you said you were going to do this when you were done with that. So I think it's very important to set aside some time. And it's really hard. And I can tell you from years of working with competitors, I used to try to push them earlier before they finish wrapping up the show to ask them what's next. And I find that's useless. The best time to talk to them about what's next is literally 2 days after they've completed that goal, because they need some time to let the dust settle. They're still on that excitement high, but yet their family might start to say, hey, let's have, a little bit more flexibility, or, all of a sudden they realize that, deadlines that may have been pushed off for things they needed to do, because in prep, it's very easy to kind of push those things off until after the show. So I think sometimes you have to be kinder to yourself to realize that the rest of the world's not going on your time frame. Okay. So maybe when you're done with your goal, that you have to catch up with the rest of the world, like your world. And that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you've lost your motivation. That doesn't mean you're out of the mindset. And that's the discord that people have to acknowledge, that and this discord is really, really important, because for the person who maybe, kind of falls off their nutrition or their gym, and then they kind of 2 months later, they're going, wow, here I am, I've put some weight on, I'm not feeling great. Change is not going to happen until you're really frustrated and tired of where you are to be able to take the steps, the difficult steps, to move in the direction you need to go. This is what brought you to be a competitor at the beginning, right? And you forget, it may only be 16 weeks, it may be 6 months, but you forget you were here before and you got out of this place. So remember, you will get out of that place, but you have to allow yourself the forgiveness to realign that mindset and set more realistic goals. I can tell you the number, the oodles and oodles of people that I will just say to them, look, just this week, get to the gym 3 times. Okay, let's start there. Get to the grocery store, fill your cart with those fresh foods and vegetables, and let's start planning again. Let's just get into the rhythm of the things that feel good. And now you even know that you had to experience that. And coming especially after COVID, for a lot of people, you're still going through these paces of like, wow, I'm going back to the gym, and either it feels great or it still feels very, very weird. So you have to acknowledge that you have these emotions, that you have these feelings, that other people around you. So my best words for people are, sound, and if you all know me, Coach Jules always will say, give yourself a little bit of forgiveness here, because you will find your way back. We just have to find it. And sometimes you have to break it down into little pieces. Do you want to share a little bit about anything there? Elle.
I just really like what you said. Yeah, no, the listeners, what do you guys have to say? We actually would love to hear what you guys have to say. So if you ever are listening to a podcast and a thought comes to your mind, please feel free to Instagram message us or shoot us an email.
Yeah.
Or anything. Yeah, just because, I'm on Instagram more than Jules is. So Jules loves the email, and I'll be in my inbox. So if you guys ever want to, ask questions or even throw out topics that you think that we should cover, we'd love to hear them. But what I really liked what you said was, when you tell somebody, and this is applicable to even the everyday person, someone that isn't a competitor who just wants to make a change, because a lot of times it really is when you find yourself in that stuck mindset, or in kind of a bitter mindset, or a lost mindset, where you don't really you have a big goal, but you can't really figure out what it is to get you there. You have to go back to the foundation, and you have to say, okay, well, what are the daily habits that I need to accomplish in order to reach that goal? And sometimes you have to break it into chunks, and those chunks really have to be, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times. And even if I don't want to go to the gym, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to walk for 10 to 15 minutes. And if by the end of the 15 minutes, I still don't want to do my workout, I go home. And just that small part is going to help you determine what is important to you. Because when you start to do those habits, when you start to buy the healthier food, you're never going to eat healthier if you don't go grocery shopping and buy your food.
You can't work out unless you go to the gym. Well, you can, but
you can't work out.
Yeah.
Well, right. Well, unless you get started. And so it really is getting back to the foundation of what it is that's important to you, and what are the little habits that are going to help you reach that greater goal. But yeah, I really liked what you said about, being in different phases and having realistic goals, because I even really liked what you said about not asking somebody what's next until after the experience, because like we said earlier, sometimes the experience can dictate what's next, and as a coach, you and I are both here to guide somebody with what might be that realistic goal that comes next. And sometimes you do need somebody with that outside perspective to say, listen, this actually might be what's better for you, even though deep down you are striving for this goal and you really think that you want this. Let's just rewind and be a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, and that comes down to also, the concept of being honest with yourself. And if you're moving along, and this can also happen with competitors that we know during the process, sometimes we see things happening, and I feel a responsibility as a coach is to be in tune with my client, and Elle feels the same way, so that if they're struggling a little bit with the mindset, that we evaluate, we reassess, and whether or not, and so many times, I have said to competitors, I just want to double check that this time is a good time. And it's okay to say, I gotta take a step back. It's okay. And then often it just sort of triggers and they go, no. I'm going through something here, and I just need to find my way through it. And I say, that's okay. Because when you have those times of struggle, those are the ones that you really firms up your mindset. So, if you have this wonderful prep and you never have an up and down or a doubt in your mind, that's great, but that's really rare. That's really rare. But we have to also realize that sometimes it's okay to change your mindset. Doesn't mean you're giving up on what you're accomplishing, but sometimes you just have to shift the mindset. We've often shifted show dates, or we've shifted, and just said, hey, not now. Or, make things happen in a different direction or faster. So I think it is something that mindset is something that you can check in with periodically and just say, where am I? What's my focus? What are my real, some people will call it your mind, your why. I don't really think mindset is your why. I think mindset is digs deeper into the actual of, I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do this, because it can also be, it's like if you decide, I'm not going to drink alcohol, right? Because I want to work on getting to the stage. I don't want to drink alcohol, but you're out with a bunch of people. You have to make that mindset saying, I'm not going to drink alcohol, right? That's your mindset. It's the same thing of making that decision. But I sort of sidestep on that one. I'll let you continue, Elle.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think, what else? I'm just trying to think of what other important mindset aspects that we haven't talked about, because we've talked about, where you should really be in that starting mindset when you're deciding, okay, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I might do. And I think that it's really important, and you kind of touched on this just now, that you should try to dip your toe in the water a little bit. And that's really what I did when I first started this prep. Jules and I had a lot of conversations, and bless her heart, because not only is she my mom, but she's also my coach. So, I come to her with a lot of my crazy ideas over the years, and she's always been very supportive. And when I came to her, and what would you say? It was probably February, March that I started to, maybe January, February. I can't even think. When do you think that I started thinking about doing a prep this year?
I think you mentioned it probably around January, and you were just really kind of getting back into the routine of working out. I think your gym in your apartment had opened up a little bit, and then it shut down again. And it was kind of like, I was starting to really get in the groove, and then now I'm back to working at it in my apartment. Can I come home and work out in your home gym? That kind of thing. But that's when I really felt like, right. And then you really were getting into the groove. And then, the nutrition part was a little bit of a struggle before that, but it just because I think we were all just sort of navigating, how were we going to the store? Going to the stores were making us anxious, with even little things like that. Even though in a perfect world, you'd be like, wow, look, there's no socialization. Prepping for a show should be the easiest thing in the world. But not really, because there were all these other stumbling blocks. But, and I think that it really kind of solidified, I want to say in March, when you realize that, oh, I'm really in a groove now. Okay. And I can make this happen. And I think, then the gyms were coming back, they shut down for a while, and then they were opening up very slowly, and the vaccinations were starting, blah, blah, blah. So, the confidence to be able to go out and do these things a little more safely. So, really helped, you there. But yeah, it was a little bit of toe in the water, little toe out of the water, toe in the water. Okay, I'm going to jump in.
Right. So yeah, it was about, you're right. Cause it was about March when I started to say okay, I think I'm ready. Can you give me some macros to start on? And, I had a really hard time the first 2 weeks. I would say it took me about 2 weeks. My appetite was so poor.
So bad.
And I would be it was so bad. And I think a lot of it was to do with stress. I was dealing with a lot of, just personal things. And so, but I kept pushing myself to hit my macros. I remember, I was telling you, those first 2 weeks, I was checking in being yeah, I hit my macros, but I choked everything down, or I was at her place a lot, and I'd be eating, and I'd be I can't eat this. But I was dipping my toe in the water to see if I could come around. And so what it took was me executing the plan. And I keep saying this because you have nothing without execution. So it's so easy to have a plan. It's so easy to have a workout routine, but unless you do it, you're not going to get any results. And so I dipped my toe into the water, and I was training. I was back and consistent. And once I felt like I was really in, that's when I said, okay, let's do this. And I turned it up. But there's been times where I have wanted to do a prep, or I've thought that I've wanted to do a prep, and I haven't been able to. So you dip your toe in, but it's when you're like, oh, it's too cold. I don't want to go in that water. Like, I'm not ready for that. And so you really have to be ready to suffer a little bit, because this is not easy. You have to be ready to give things up. You have to understand what it takes in order to be successful. And that mindset can grow. And so there's nothing wrong with starting something and being a little bit unsure, but continuing to execute. And then if things fall into place, things fall into place. But as Joel said before, just because things don't fall into place doesn't mean that you failed, doesn't mean that you had to quit. It doesn't mean that you were giving up. It just means that all the pieces weren't aligned. And that this is applicable for so many things in your life. If there's certain things that aren't aligned, like even in relationships, like if you're not fully ready to be honest or open or whatever the case is for you in a relationship, your relationship with whoever this person is isn't going to be successful, because all of those pieces that are needed to make something whole aren't going to be there. And just because you decide not to pursue this relationship, this hypothetical relationship, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means it's not for you right now. And you can go back to the drawing board and you can say, okay, which pieces do I need to work on? Which things are really preventing me from reaching my full potential here? And then circle back, and hopefully with that time spent away, acknowledging it, accepting it, you'll be able to come back full force, kind of like I have been able to do. Because there's been, I took 2 years that I was like, I can't think about this. I can't think about doing a show. And I'll tell you, those 2 years, though they were some of the most challenging years of my life for different reasons, they have allowed me to be where I'm at today in order to get back to a goal that I care so much about and that I want so badly. And without that, that break and that step away from the mindset of the competitor, I don't know if I would have been able to be here full force.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in watching everything that you've gone through, and also, working with so many competitors. I have competitors I've worked with for 12 years, and they're, they compete, and then they don't compete for a few years, and then they do again, and then they don't for a few years, but they deal with the different things in their lives, personal things, health things. And even when we have somebody who's new, who comes and calls us and says, I want to find out about competition prep, and they don't really, they get some information. They're like, okay, when I'm 16 weeks out, I'm going to call you because I'm ready for a show. And I'm, if you're thinking about a competition, you're really starting to be in the mindset. So why would you not embrace that, cultivate that mindset, and start to work on the things that are going to help you be more successful? So, and that's why, we even do our improvement season program for that. And just so that you can solidify those things that are going to make your prep, it's going to be challenging no matter what. Okay. So if you can control the things that you have to do to get there and make that process a little smoother, then when the life challenges come your way, you're better to handle those, because, you can't compete in a vacuum. It would be really nice. That's what I said earlier, that, you could have a perfect 16 weeks. And isn't that glorious? But, that's so rare. Some things are going to happen in that time. So you have to be able to embrace that and realize that that may not change that mindset for your original goal. It may have to change aspects of what you have to do. Did you have something to add there, Elle?
Well, it just, when you said that about, it's a rare thing to have a perfect 16 weeks. Very true. It's very unlikely that there'll be better. Is that Gertie?
I don't know. Some sort of squeaky toy. I thought I got rid of them all. Sorry, listeners.
That's funny. My guy was. Yeah, I'm sure the listeners know that we have dogs, and now that almost everybody's doing stuff from home, we used to be some of the only people that were like recording stuff from home just because the nature of our job. But now that everybody records stuff from home, I don't even worry so much about a squeaky dog toy, because I feel like that's expected in calls and podcasts. But sorry if it's unprofessional to you guys. We've got dogs. We love our dogs, and we try to hide the squeakies. Doesn't always happen.
I thought I threw them all in the yard, but
that's funny. No, you're fine. So, but just this last thing, and then we'll wrap up for the day with this episode. But it's very rare that you'll have a perfect 16 weeks. But it's true that you do have to find a time that's more appropriate for yourself to be in a prep. Like a time where you're going on a ton of vacations, or like, I don't know, you have a lot of, maybe you have a busy quarter at work, or like it's the holiday season, and like it has to match with your schedule and your life. But this is something for lifestyle individuals too, just people who are looking to make a change with their life. And I don't know if they've gotten this far in the competition prep mindset episode, but I do think that this mindset is applicable to just changing something about your health and fitness. So even for somebody who's like, I have no interest in being a competitor, you kind of have to apply these same concepts to what it takes to reach a fitness goal. And that fitness goal may just be losing 60 pounds. And the truth is that there will never be a good time to lose 60 pounds. There will always be a dinner. There will always be a brunch that you want to drink alcohol at. There will always be a holiday party. There will always be donuts in the break room. Little Maxie. There will always be something that could knock you off your game. And so the mindset needs to be so strong. The mindset needs to be, we're almost done here. The mindset needs to be so strong that it cannot knock you off your game. So whether that's a competition prep, or that is just losing 50, 60, 70, 100 pounds, you have to have the mindset of, this is what I want, and I'm going to I'm going to make sure that my habits reflect the things that I want. And just the last little bit of tough love, if you want something, you have to just do it. Like, you can't sit around and complain about all the reasons why you can't do it, or why you haven't been able to do it in the past. You kind of have to just suck it up and do it if it's truly what you want. And if you're not, I feel like I've said this before, but if you're not willing to do what it takes to get something that you quote unquote want, you clearly don't want it enough. So you have to figure out deep down what it is that you actually want, and if your actions are going to align with those goals, or if you're just going to say it and do nothing about it.
And it's perfectly fine
we're going to end.
We're going to end here because my dog is squeaking like crazy. Yes. And that's where I say sometimes you just have to, redefine what it is and then adjust the mindset for that. And that is perfectly fine. Okay. It just make sure that mindset is going to propel you into a positive thing for yourself.
Yes. Well, Max took me saying that squeaking was okay to have a party. So thank you guys for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram I'm at L_BFitBody. It will be in the show notes. Our email is bestfitbody@gmail.com. Everything will be linked below. If you are interested in any of our lifestyle programs, our competition prep programs, or our 12-week Looks Like a Competitor program, which is a program for an individual who doesn't necessarily want to get on stage, but they want to really push themselves for a 12-week period of time. So if you have any questions, please reach out. We'll speak with you later.
Bye, everyone.